Make it personal.
Yeah. I'm going to give you a heads up. I may have to call a break, a bio break in the middle of the meeting. So, sorry. Okay, it's 6 o'clock. I call the meeting of December 11th, 2024 at 6 p.m. First thing on our agenda, I believe, is roll call.
Here.
Here.
Commissioner Nicolai.
Here.
Commissioner Blair.
Here.
Commissioner Fellows.
Here.
Petrie.
Here.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Here.
Chair Bain.
Yes. Okay. Before we start our formal agenda, I need to put something on the record. I had asked no one to contact me in any way, shape, or form last week. I had my hip replaced and was on heavy narcotics. Unfortunately, a member of our commission sent me an email, and I attempted to try and answer it. And luckily, before it got too far, I immediately sent it to Ronnie. And I'm accountable. I should have not opened the email because I was not with it. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure it was all clear and no other communication happened. Thanks. Okay. Approval of minutes from the meeting on November 13th. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I have an edit.
Okay.
I have some edits also.
All right. I will ask somebody to keep track because I can't write fast enough to your edits. Go ahead first.
And I have this written, Ronnie. I have it written. So in the minutes, I would like to replace the existing paragraph that reads, Commissioner Blair, should I make this as a motion or do you want to talk about it?
What about it?
Okay, cool. Replace the paragraph that says, Commissioner Blair expressed hesitation about moving forward without more input from the Edgewater HOA, noting they own a significant portion of the land. He suggested postponing approval to approve more time for their review. And replace that paragraph with this paragraph. Commissioner Blair expressed hesitation about moving forward without more collaboration with the Edgewater HOA, noting that they own a significant portion of the land. He also noted that the commissioners had received emails from the Edgewater HOA president and a member of their land use committee requesting that the Planning Commission not approve the concept plan until Edgewater had a chance to review their options. He suggested postponing approval to allow more time for the review.
Thank you. Commissioner Mitchell, you had some.
Yes, and I've written them out, and I'll give them to Ronnie, assuming you all approve these
Okay.
proposed updates and corrections.
Could I make a suggestion in the future? If once you get your package, you see the minutes, if you could get them written and make sure that all of us see them before we get here, it'll probably make it more efficient.
Okay. That's a good suggestion. Thank you. Okay, proposed revisions. I would like to add that statement regarding Commissioner Mitchell raised concerns about changing the comprehensive plan and being in compliance with OAR 660-18-0020, notice of a proposed change to a comprehensive plan or land use regulation, and OAR 660-018-022, post-acknowledgement plan amendments. The West Side Trail Park concept plan changes the comprehensive plan use from being a linear park to community park. The definition of linear versus community is significantly different, and also concerns the assumptions and evaluations in the KTMP regarding how all planned parks and locations and funding mechanisms meet statewide planning goals. The city has not conducted a review required per OAR 660-018 and 0020 to demonstrate the change does not substantially affect statewide planning goals as previously evaluated by the comp plan. And per OAR 660-0022, be submitted to DLCD stating the only effect of the proposed change is to conform to the comprehensive plan. Okay, I'd like to have it added instead of the paragraph stating that Max Carter and Mike Weston provided clarification on deadlines.
The last meeting,
What's that?
was this brought up at the last meeting?
Yes.
Verbatim?
Pretty much.
All right, I don't do verbatim minutes, remember that.
Okay, that's why I'm providing the details, because I think it's important to include these details. That paragraph, starting with Max Carter and Mike Weston, provided clarification on grant deadlines. The last sentence stating they emphasized this is a concept plan that can be refined further. I didn't recall that was what was said, so I reviewed the video recording, and I didn't pick it up anywhere where that was said. But what I did hear was the following. Manager Weston subsequently reviewed the definitions and stated his opinion that the definitions of linear versus community park are not significantly different, and that he doesn't think it's a change to the comp plan. But I'd like that to be revised.
Well, by your putting it on the record here, it will be there,
Okay,
as long as the approval of the, and you have more amendments?
yes, two more. Commissioner Mitchell noted there is no estimate for maintenance expenses for building this park and what the cost would be for existing residents. And the staff noted that stakeholder input on the West Side Trail concept plan did not include any input from Edgewater HOA because the HOA was contacted and declined to comment, but did not explain why more effort was not made to get input from that community most affected by the concept plan. Thank you. Ronnie, I'll provide this printout to you if you'd like.
Oh, question. Is this all of what you said
Yes.
at the last meeting? So it's in the recording already, right?
And Ronnie, can you just address the question of minutes? Because generally speaking, minutes are not supposed to be verbatim conversation.
The city has a policy of doing action minutes, so each motion that you guys make, that's what I record. As a courtesy, with the newer commission, I've been doing a little bit more, it's more like a summary action minutes. So I take what you say and shorten it down to as much as I can, without losing the context of what was said. But I did miss the ORS and ORA.
OARs.
Thank you, that he mentioned, and I did remember him saying it, so I'll just add that in.
Okay, I'll give you this, and if you would include this as I've written it, I would appreciate it. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other amendments? With that, I take a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand, or left hand, some hand, a hand. Okay. All right, we'll move on to the main point of the agenda, and I will preface this. I testified when these bills were going through the legislature, and they were passed in 2017. And I saw some issues that were going to be coming up. And as ECLD drafted the regulations to implement, I was there when they did their presentation to MPAC, and I'm going, this is going to be a piece of work. And basically, the legislation says we don't have much choice. It has to basically be adopted according to their language. So with that, you're on, Pat.
I didn't hear anything you just said.
Oh.
Obviously, we had something.
Do these work? Okay. Mr. Shawn?
Would you like to just summarize?
I was following the process as it was going along and saw the DCLD proposed regs, and then they were implemented, and basically it deprives local jurisdictions of any independence on these kinds of our agenda tonight. So, with that, you're on.
Okay. I'm gonna see if I can pull up this little infographic. Okay. You can't really see it. It doesn't really come out very well. But basically, what is on the TVs and what dictated the city's option for how we were going to approach the tech amendments for OARs. So you had OAR 660-012-0420, which was encompassed option 1. Which, as I mentioned in my staff report, was the simplest and most straightforward option, and honestly kind of the option that is the most rigid, but also obtains the objectives of the CFEC parking mandates the most. And that option is to repeal all parking mandates within the jurisdiction flat out. So what that means is essentially just to change your code and make it to where you can no longer have minimum parking spaces off-street for any type of new development. So that's the option that we went. The other two options involve passing multiple ordinances, not eliminating all parking, changing code amendments, or changing some different code structures around. It seemed like it would probably be a more suitable option for a larger jurisdiction, and then also one that has a little bit more capacity. I feel that repealing all mandates was a simple solution, but again, what I went with for our code amendments went beyond just repealing all the parking. We also added a piece to the way that new parking lots will be configured. So, going to the staff report, I'll just kind of go section by section. 4 code sections were affected. First one being section 16.114.130, which is the Kingston Terrace code amendment. So when this was originally written and it passed last year, or last year in 2023, it had this provision for electric service capacity already baked into it because a lot of the CFEC parameters were already put into that Kingston Terrace district code. But what I did was I deleted the provision 7 and replaced it with one that matches the electric service capacity that I baked into the regular King City code, just so that it's consistent.
Can you, be specific what that means then?
Yes. So now, if you build a parking lot, you have to provide for electric service capacity to be, essentially, you have charging stations for electric vehicles. Non-residential development and residential or mixed-use developments with less than 5 dwelling units must provide electrical service capacity to a minimum of 20% of all off-street parking vehicles on the site. So if you have an apartment building with, or no, not an apartment building, if you have any building with 5 units on it, then you have to have 20%. If you have a building with more than 5, you have to have a minimum of 40%. It just doesn't apply to townhomes. Anyone have any questions about that particular piece?
Just clarify, for everyone's benefit, that the capacity, the electrical capacity is just for conduit. It doesn't necessarily mean that it gets installed. Is that correct?
It doesn't call for installation of the actual.
Right, it's just so that it could be put in the future.
Yeah.
Okay,
And in the event someone builds a convenience store or a shopping mall or something, and it comes to the commission, it would be an easier ask to say, hey, well, if you're gonna be building, a strip mall on this parking lot, you already have the capacity there, put in the station.
okay.
I have a question. When you talk about development, are you talking about all the buildings on a block, or are you talking about each building? Like non-residential. I'm just thinking about the different words for development, a building or a group of buildings.
Right.
So,
It says with less than 5 dwelling units. For residential or mixed use, or just a non-residential development. So any non-residential development, I would take that as like a convenience store, library. There are no dwelling units, so dwelling units don't apply to non-residential units. So any type of, like, for example, in the event that 131st gets developed in the future, 131st Fisher, that little square that they set aside right there for lot 17, if that becomes a cafe or something of the like, and has 3 different businesses, then they will have to be compliant with this provision.
okay.
Even if it's one building.
Okay. So the whole block is not a development. The individual parts of that block are the development, right? In other words, you're not counting the townhouses, which is in the development, as it was drawn as a.
Yeah, I don't think so. But again, like if you are building a home, you're not going to have a parking lot for your home.
Okay.
You have a garage or whatever. That answers your question. Okay. 16124, landscape and beautification.
Excuse me, I do have one quick question. We're gonna have all underground utilities, right? With this particular, I'm not electrically cognizant. Would this provision cause any issues in terms of getting into the electric vault, getting into the vaults for all of the utilities?
I don't see why it would. I think it would be similar to just if you're, adding any kind of housing unit or any kind of structure to.
Okay. I just don't want to cause a problem.
And if you look at how charging station generally looks, it looks like a gas pump, it's coming out from underneath the ground. So 16124, this chapter talks pretty broadly about landscape and beautification, but what I did was
What page are you on?
page the staff report.
I'm following the actual code for.
The actual ordinance.
Yes, and that's on page 12.
Got it.
The examples of the ordinance from the staff report, so they don't quite match up. But give me a second. Okay. Well, in the ordinance, it's on page 18, but matches where I was talking about.
All right. Well, maybe if you can give us page numbers, we'll be right with you.
Looking at chapter 16, section 124140.
And on what page?
In the ordinance, it's on page 18.
Because I've got conclusions and recommendations on page 18.
Mhm. You have the full thing or just the, are you good?
I don't know what you're looking, well, you're looking at the packet, right?
Yes.
Oh, I don't have a packet. I have different documents. Next time I'll have a packet.
I printed out the packet.
That was a packet, it's from.
The staff report synthesized everything in a way that
Mhm.
makes sense.
All right, let's,
The packet has all the stuff from, it has all the
Yeah.
broader.
I was reading, worked on the whole thing.
Okay.
So what page are
If
you
you
on?
can all find, go through the code and find chapter 16, section 124.
Yes.
That is the section we were talking
Page
about.
one. Okay.
Wherever it may be. Sorry. Next time I'll print out.
It's on, it is on page 12, which is where we were in the first place.
Sorry, are we all there? Are we all looking at tree canopy?
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
tree canopy. So this replaced previous chapter 16124B, which was criteria for trees and parking areas, which was kind of ambiguous. I would argue is no longer compliant with state law because state law requires code to be clear and objective. So I replaced it with the new tree canopy provision, which is, in my opinion, clear and objective, and easier to follow along. So tree canopy must be provided over parking lot areas in compliance with the standards of this subsection. Values are credited at 75% of their listed canopy in the King City Urban Forestry Manual, or at 75% of the area calculated using the method described in section 4 of the Urban Forestry Guide. That's an amendment I need to make. The guide, not a manual. The UFM should be UFG. So anyway, so 75% of tree coverage. If you ever look at a diagram, you know, I use the plaza parking lot as the primary reference because it has no trees. It is often mostly empty. Cherries doesn't exist anymore, so that parking lot doesn't, you know, it would just be better in a broad sense to have tree canopy. So we've added provisions that are clear and dictate something that's more achievable and easier for plan review to look at and criteria.
Can I ask a question? I know it's in a different place where you've got the root barrier situation and the size of the parcel to support the tree. Across the street in Safeway, and many parking, there's really not sufficient, and the trees just don't do well. Will this provision provide the planners and the city to make sure that developers in parking lots or whatever are giving sufficient size of land and to let the tree grow, but on the other hand, control the roots so it's not going up through the sidewalk or...
Right.
It's called soil volume.
Thank you.
And that was the biggest thing that, Kiker, the guy who wrote the thing was on to, that was his thing, soil volume. And I've noticed that, you need 3 feet on each side of, trees, so that's really a lot of, the big amount.
Right. I took out the soil volume stuff from the guide because frankly, I don't understand it. And I don't want to put in code that I don't understand. And can't enforce. And especially because we have this quick turnaround I want to reiterate that the feedback stuff, the parking mandates are absolutely due by the end of the year.
But
So this is something that can be refined much more in the future. And I know it's there for a reason. But if I'm looking at it and I'm reading it and I'm talking to people and they don't like it, I just can't like. How can I explain? We don't have an arborist on staff or a forestry department
But our parking are maximums, right? Now, they're no longer minimums, they're maximums. Okay.
I thought this was about minimum parking.
Yeah, we eliminated minimum parking.
Eliminated.
Oh, okay, all right, gotcha, all right.
And a lot of the minimum parking, we actually just changed to actually be maximum. It is adequate for a lot of things.
So they don't have to provide any parking at all, but,
Maybe not.
yeah.
Off-street parking no longer has to be. Anyone have any questions about the street canopy portion?
Just a question, could you explain, just for background, what's the 20,000 square foot size?
So that was a requirement from VLCT when I keep in mind, a lot of these amendments were run by VLCT. That was a number. The 20,000 square feet is a nice even number, but they wanted something in there that was close to half an acre.
Okay,
So they wanted to differentiate, lower or larger than half.
20,000 square feet is not half an acre.
It's like 21 something thousand square feet is half an acre.
43,560 is 1 acre.
Yeah, so half an,
22,000.
oh, okay, all right, gotcha. Right, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to 16132.
Bottom page 13.
Okay, so yeah, 16132 is when we start getting into the parking standards. The vehicle parking and loading standards, this is still going into the old King City municipal code, development code. So the ratios, I changed the quantity. Just added that. So I added this 16132.030 vehicle parking and loading standards. We have better ratios. And also have the flexible service capacity provision in there.
Again, oh, excuse me.
Just wondered. You changed it to maximum parking, is that what the state, land commission proposed, rather than just minimums?
Well, they wanted to eliminate minimum parking.
But you're adding in,
I'm adding in maximums because if you don't have maximums, then what's to stop a developer from building a giant massive parking lot?
So that's the reason that you use floor area ratio, to make your delineations.
Think about
Let's use grocery outlet for an example.
grocery outlet as an example. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Commissioner Blair. The grocery outlet is 19,000. Look at the chart, within the ordinance on page 23 or in the staff report on whatever page that is, page 6, chart. Do maximum off-street parking standards chart, 1632040. I would consider grocery outlet to be, a retail sales and service facility. Their maximum allowed parking is 3.7 spaces per 1,000 square feet. Which, before it was a minimum of 1 space per 500. So we didn't just completely replace the minimum with maximum, but we added maximums, and I did just comparable maximums to other cities, Tigard, Tualatin, But 3.7 spaces per 1,000 square feet for a 19,000 square foot facility is 54 spaces for grocery outlets. And if I did the math, that's not right. No, it's 57 spaces for grocery outlets. I think it has way more than that right now. So grocery outlet as it is right now would still be able to build its parking lot within the parameters of the new code. But if there is like I don't know, like a car dealership or something that just wants to come in and build 1,000 spaces for a small facility, that would not be allowed
Okay.
necessarily.
Costco.
Yeah, Costco, depending on how big is a typical Costco.
Oh, they have a lot of people.
They're pretty huge.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at the code to see if the Costco is even allowed in zoning. But I think of like, you know, you have potentially similar grocery outlet, probably smaller size grocery store, potentially in the future over in the Kingston Terrace Town Center area. If Owls ever decides to develop, which would be probably maybe like, let's say it's half the size of grocery outlet because it's a little neighborhood store, so it's 10,000 square feet. So you'd have 37 spaces for that little store. But the idea is, from a planning perspective, is to increase encourage people to walk, encourage people to ride their bikes, electric scooter, electric trike, to discourage people from using cars in order to do our part to minimize carbon emissions and reduce impacts on the earth.
Can I ask a question? How would you like us to handle this? Do you want us to do one big mega load, or do you want to be doing these by ordinance?
I would like this to all be one ordinance.
Okay,
If you look at the grand scheme of things, there's really not that many amendments, a handful.
Yeah.
But it should be a lot of ordinance. We actually haven't passed any ordinances. So, I know they're all the same thing, well, the same theme.
is this going to be a resolution because we're just recommending?
You're recommending the passage of an ordinance.
Okay,
Ordinance 2024-01.
all right, you said it's 24-01? Okay.
Actually, I have another question. Any other cities apply maximums like you have?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, almost every city has maximum allowed
Okay,
parking.
all right, that's all I wanted to.
These
yeah.
figures that I got were derived from, cities around this area.
Okay, good, thank you.
I just want to say, this conversation started about 20 years ago when Walmart used to build their parking lots to accommodate their Christmas crowd. And they were maybe a third full at Easter. And that's where the conversation started, that we don't want to take up land just parking cars. It has then extended into what Max has talked about in terms of encouraging people to get there in other ways than cars.
We're still doing questions from council to the staff report.
Thank you, Carol.
That was just context.
There's a lot of data out there, and even just if you look at it logistically, think about areas in the city where you prefer to walk around, or where you would rather not. You know, I think of maybe like downtown Milwaukee, where I live, doesn't have any parking lots in front of the building, street front, versus like southeast 82nd, which is just endless car strips and no on-street trees or no medians, and it's just like it's not a very friendly place to be. So this is in the spirit of trying to build those kind of neighborhood areas where it encourages pedestrians and encourages people just to get out and walk around, because it's just nicer to be walking around in places that aren't paved and asphalt. At least in my. So the next, the immediately next table is parking dimensional standards. I didn't change anything for those standards. Those are building standards that are law. The only thing I changed is subsection D, which is compact parking. The compact parking spaces described in this title should not be used to satisfy no more than 50% of the total required number of parking spaces, say 25%. But as we're finding that compact parking is just kind of adds to parking spaces that don't get used, and people just driving around more looking for more parking because they can't park in compact spaces.
I'm on your staff report. For clarification, do the disability parking spaces, do they have to be included in the maximum? Are they included?
No, they're not.
Okay. That's what I thought I'm reading here. Okay.
Parking for the handicapped.
Not now, but at some point, I'd like you to make a note, Max. I think because of the demographic that we have, we may want to add extra required disabled parking. You could make that as a note for a tweak.
Yes, do we want to have a maximum disabled parking spaces number?
They fall outside the rules.
Right. I noticed that.
Yeah.
Also, it looked like the number of spaces that are within the building's footprint are not included in maximums.
Yeah.
Alright, so yeah, and then going on to 132.50, I switched the word handicap or persons with disabilities.
Okay.
And then 1, 2, 3, 4 they have language in them that goes back to having minimum parking. So I just replaced that with language that doesn't refer to it. But like number 2, this also speaks to a lot of our code that's stated. Parking lots, parking spaces shall conform to the requirements of chapter 31 of the Uniform Building Code. I called our building inspector, Dave Fleming, who's been doing the job for a long time, and I asked him what that was, and he said it doesn't exist anymore. It hasn't existed for like 20 years.
Okay.
So there's a lot of stuff like that in the code that's neat. And then I have some more illumination, because before I just had lighting. Any lights provided shall be arranged to refract the light away from neighboring residential districts. Again, that's not really very clear. So I added pedestrian paths, added points, cutoff angles of 90 degrees, light trespass.
Can we write in dark sky standards?
Certainly can, probably not with this ordinance.
We could maybe follow that up with the minor tweaks that we'll do in the next
I
year.
have a feeling that dark sky ordinance. That
Oh.
would have to go in, be its own subsection within the development
Oh.
code.
But it's pretty.
You have different stuff for commercial and
Yeah.
pathways and streets. Residential, that would be a big on taking.
but I think important,
I agree,
yeah.
I agree.
And I think it's all written out for you already, so.
I spent an entire summer at the National Park Service.
Okay. Right.
Regular report, sun, dark sky. So I totally agree.
Uh-huh.
Good, we have our own in-house expert.
I know all about the luminaires and everything.
Yeah, okay, good.
Okay, and then after subsection F of that same section, 132, we have provisions for carpool and van pool parking, just to encourage more people sharing cars. And then we have a reference to the previous chapter about landscaping, just to kind of tie it into previous requirements. We didn't have a section for parking structure standards, so I added one, although I don't anticipate there being any parking structures in the Kingston Terrace area. I don't think it's in the code, but it seems like something that should be added just because in the event it never happens somewhere down the road. And then this whole last bit, the last like 20 pages in the ordinance that deals with the code is in the section 152 on site plan review. And I included that entire section, but I only deleted one line, which in the ordinance is on page 40 in the staff report. On page 38. Actually, the staff report has the ordinance in it. Yeah, in the reference. So I should have mentioned that a long time ago. Essentially, when I sent this to DLCD, they combed through our code and then they found this one provision, section N, manufactured homes, that requires manufactured homes to have a garage, and they said we can't do that. We cannot force homes to have garages. So I deleted that.
Isn't that wonderful for the rainy season?
Now, we can't force them to have garages.
I
We can't force them to have one, but.
A garage and a carport are different things.
Yes.
And I think that covers all of these things.
I just had how much discretion in the site plan review? I read it. I still wasn't clear on what kind of discretion that the city has in terms of following the various rabbit holes.
I mean, the city doesn't have a lot of discretion. That's kind of why the code is there.
Yeah, well, that's my concern. It seems to me that's the place to be flexible. Technology is going to change. Who knows what things will be like 10 years from now?
Yeah, 10 years it'll just be a robot. You won't be able to see my next smiling face.
The point I was making, the only point I was making is we want to make sure we don't cut ourselves into a box that.
Ultimately, what really needs to happen, and when the city has the funds for it, and this is something that I'll lobby the city manager in the future and the city council, is that we need to hire a consultant to go in and do a major, complete overhaul of the city code. Because the city code, you know, even just with a few examples in here, which is the parking provision, is dated, it references stuff that doesn't exist anymore. It has requirements that are easy to misconstrue or don't make much sense. So, you know, that's, but I'm only one person, so there's only so much I can do. Because when you change code, you have to go, you know, level by level and make sure that you're starting from the top at the state level, at the federal level, and then state, and then county, and then metro, and then your code, and.
Is everyone aware that all code has to go to LCDL? DCLB, for review before it can even be considered.
What does DLC stand for?
It's Department of Land Conservation and Development.
Okay.
It's the statewide land use department.
Okay.
So for this hearing, for these code amendments, as Commissioner Mitchell has referred to before, I have opened a post-acknowledgement land amendment, a pop-up. I've sent them multiple revisions of this. I've sent them my public notice of this hearing. I'll send them your recommendation. And those are also public records. So if you go into the DLCD's website, you can find all of their PAPAs that are pending or approved or go through their whole process. So, and there's like a notification requirement. We sent out mailers to every person in the city for this. So, very strict process that requires quite a lot of work. That's why it was, it would have been easy just to wave a magic wand and say, oh yeah, no more parking, whatever. But even for something like that, it's a big process.
Better part of a year.
Does anyone else have any questions about code amendment? We can get to the tree guy.
Yeah.
Landscape and beautification, I guess this is, I'm just looking here, minimum improvements within a buffer area between a residential and commercial, which is 16.124.110, and I'm down here, D, number 2. I would suggest, well, okay, so it reads, in addition, at least 10 5-gallon shrubs or 20 1-gallon per 1,000 square feet of required buffer area. I would personally cut out 21 gallon, because
What section, I'm sorry, where are you here?
It's 16.124.110 buffering and screening requirements.
Right.
Because when you plant something, you want it to grow to full size, and planting 1 gallons closer together doesn't necessarily do the job of 10 5-gallons. In that the 5 gallons are bigger, and you plant them in the right distance apart, and then they don't all die.
To allow for more.
To allow for full growth. Yeah.
And that could be a suggestion for.
Okay. Later. Okay.
So are we moving to the guide or to the?
So we can move to the guide. So on your bench, I put this email that I got, unfortunately timed yesterday evening. But I have been working with PCD a little bit, and folks are excited in synthesizing this guide. And she gave me Maureen Jackson over there, whom you have met before. She was here in the summer. Gave us this last little bit of advice, which I agree with some of it. Some of it I'm not sure about. So I can just go back through this real quick, because what my recommendation will change to is recommendation with minor amendments. So section 2, part 1, we have these suggestions about tree placements and whatnot. What I did, instead of following her suggestions, I simply just suggest amending the guide to refer back to the code. So she has this part 1E, and she recommends XYZ. Adjusted spreads larger than medium or small stature student street. Again, I'm not an arborist, so I'm not sure exactly how I would do that. So I changed section E to say street trees must be placed according to the standards outlined in the Kansas City Municipal Code
So what they're referring to is the spacing.
Right.
They want to space the Judas tree the same as the linden, instead of just being short and going, oh, it's too close, now
Right.
they don't
Which
grow.
it makes sense to me on a
Yeah.
logical level.
That's something that should be looked at when we have more time,
Okay,
because I think we can make a recommendation to council, just thought, that we found some minor some issues that we think might be worth looking at after we get the made code.
And again, really, this guide, I mentioned some street tree provisions because our street tree code, I wanted it to tie into it a little bit better and then play off each other. But I obviously, the Tiger manual is like 75 pages. It goes into a lot of technical stuff, soil volume, different methods for removal. And it's got kind of mixed reviews. So I didn't want to take on too much that I didn't think that we could accomplish. This would probably be just this guide would be, a while to do in multiple workshops where we actually sit down and kind of talked about it before, but.
Well, it seems to me if we have a guide that developers could review, that would be a good starting point for them.
I agree. What really brought up this guide idea originally for staff was people who come into the city like the Raptors and want to cut down their street trees. And so, in theory, you would assume that if someone's cutting down a street tree in front of their house in a planter strip that already exists, and place their replacement tree in that same planter manner that it was before. So I didn't want to get too into the technicalities of placement and stuff because I didn't want to kind of make this more than it should be.
But
So we're starting with nothing. We basically had nothing.
We don't have anything, so
We have
if someone comes in and they say, hey, I have the Japanese maple that's dying in my front yard, what tree do you recommend I replace it with? We would say, I don't know, here's Washington County's tree list.
Okay. And I will have this will
We
be.
at least have one, and,
Yeah.
this will be, I'll probably have two versions of it. I'll have this one with some of these tree standards, but then I'll have the bridge version that has their tree form at the end, and then the tree list. And we'll have those as handouts at City Hall for people who come in and have questions and want some guidance onto, what they should be replacing their trees with.
I think it's very important to go back and review, because to plant a tree where another tree has been planted is a technical job, because most of them won't grow if they're being planted where another tree's been planted. So certain things have to be done for the tree to be successful. So I'm going to go and review that very detailed in the new year.
What we could do is we could also,
Yeah.
if it's a street tree, we could add a provision where, if there's stage to go through like a professional replant your tree or something like that.
Yeah, but I can't tell you how many professionals.
Yeah, no, okay.
Professionals.
So this gets us started, this gets us something for staff to refer to when people come in. The mediation thing, is that new as well, for disputes with trees between neighbors?
Yeah, we had one particular property owner recently, I'll just use her as an example. She's just one of many examples where this happened. But she came into City Hall very distraught because her neighbor behind her house cut down essentially her neighbor's own tree collection in the backyard. So there was like a new neighbor who moved in behind the house of the person who came in and cut down all the trees in their backyard. And we looked at pictures, Mr. Runyon and I went over to her house. It is a shame what had occurred because it was like, okay, well now, the profile of your backyard is significantly degraded because your neighbor behind you cut down all their trees. And what this dispute ended up being was that there was this, like 50-year-old cherry tree that hung, I saw the trunk, it was huge, it was like this massive stump, had to be old, that used to hang over her garden, and the neighbor said that it was diseased. She disputed that, but the way that her fence was structured, her backyard fence, was that it kind of divoted and went around the tree, but it just so happened to go into her backyard and not into the neighbor's backyard. And she actually spent $1,500, got her backyard surveyed, and found out that that tree was in her backyard. Yeah. So, I don't know, there could have been something in here to say, like, well, that was not a hazard tree. Fortunately, the city didn't have much teeth to go in and enforce people cutting down their trees in their backyard in that specific neighborhood, because that neighborhood has some, that HOA has some weird, strange bylaws in their agreements.
In Lake Oswego, what they do, if you want a tree cut down, whether it's diseased or not, they have a notification system where you have a certain amount of time to question the trees coming down. Really hard to cut a tree down there.
They also have a lot of trees. Every time there's a windstorm, a bunch of trees fall down and knock out power lines in Lake Oswego.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Because
if you
they don't
have
have any underground.
if your neighbor has a spur and it's leaning over your house, you need to be able to say, hey, you need to cut down that tree.
Yeah, so you have no teeth now. You actually have some information, so you can.
And a little bit of a
A
process.
little bit of a process where there was basically has been no process, which is frustrating to people in a lot of neighborhoods that have neighbors that have trees that are problematic, so, yes. Okay, I think that's good.
So it touches on street trees, replacing street trees, removal standards, the parking lot tree standards. So we're now implementing, if you're building a parking lot, we will be requiring section 4, part 2B, parking lot plan. That's new, that's a new requirement for developers. If they're building a parking lot, they need to provide a parking lot plan that shows that they're being compliant with our and then the tree risk assessment form. So, that's the tree risk assessment form. Let me go back to the amendment suggestion real quick before I lose track. So, I deleted section E, section F. Section 2, part 1, subsection F.
Yeah,
Sorry, I lost track.
that's on the sheet you handed us out tonight.
Yeah. I deleted that, so that doesn't exist anymore because it just refers back to previous provisions within the code. I kept the root barriers needing to be installed next to utility boxes. I have a feeling maybe the developers just trying to cut corners, and that's why they don't want to be barriered by the utility box unless that's the reason why you want to put a root barrier on a tree near a utility box. So I ignored that, so I got D in there.
Okay.
Section F.
Yeah, okay.
Section 4, part 2. I took their amendment, so I changed the plan set size, again, very minor, it was before, 24 by 36, 22 by 34. And then I took their advice and I changed the canopy size on their suggested canopy sizes for those trees. These are the developers that have been planting these trees and doing these plans. And they built a lot up in River Terrace, so they're familiar with the process.
Max, will this be applicable to what's already been approved in Kingston Terrace?
It will not,
Okay,
it's already been approved.
all right.
And there's a new, that we've received a second, application from New Home and TCD for Charlotte Woods.
And it would apply there.
It doesn't apply there either
Oh.
because that application has been deemed complete and it's still be grandfathered in because we haven't adopted these yet. So, but then every development after that, it will.
Okay, time to provide testimony from the public, and not seeing anyone here in our facility. Are there any folks online that would like to give testimony? I'm sorry?
To raise their hands, like,
They need to, if there's anybody online who wants to give testimony, they need to raise their hand. Okay, hearing none, I will close the public testimony. And now, we should move to discussion on the ordinance, proposed ordinance.
Again, my recommendation is to approve, or recommend approval with the minor amendment.
Yes. I wrote that down. I know, this was a lot, and I knew it's really technical.
Can I add a tree to the tree list? I mean, is this time for that?
Probably not.
Okay.
Yeah, we're making a list for minor
Okay, all right.
corrections. And Max has been carefully writing them down.
Uh-huh.
Today's big picture day. Get the,
Pin out.
get the code going towards the council and
Right,
from there.
okay.
Probably should have a whole workshop
Do we need a motion?
next year about it.
Well, I'm waiting for, if people have any further discussion.
We need a motion and then discuss. Correct.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve, or, recommend approval of ordinance 2024-01 with minor amendments. Somebody going to make the motion?
Motion to approve the minor amendments.
Any discussion?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any further discussion?
Do we have a list of the amendments, or are we,
The amendments were spelled out in the staff report.
Yeah.
okay.
With that, I'm going to call the question. I think we have, I'm sorry?
oh, like the.
Oh, excuse me, thank you. Starting with you, Commissioner Mitchell, do you feel you have any conflict of interest in this matter?
Just because this affects all of King City, remember, you all are affected in some way. May or may not be,
Significant.
yes.
I don't believe I have any conflict of interest. However, I do live in Edgewater, and it could possibly affect our homeowners association sometime in the future, since there's a development close to our neighborhood at Southwest 131st and Fisher Road that is yet pending approval.
I am not aware of any conflict of. I live in old part of King City and there's not going to be any conflict happening down there.
I do not have a conflict of interest.
I don't live in the city, so I don't think I have a conflict of interest with that, but I do see this company show up every now and then at work. Their logo.
Yeah, I live in Edgewater, Montague, so this could affect me. There is a development, as has been mentioned there in Edgewater, so this could potentially affect me.
I don't believe I have a conflict of interest. I live in unincorporated Washington County within the King City urban growth boundary.
And like a couple of the other folks here, live in Old King City, and there will not be any development going on in our area, so I certainly don't have a conflict. Okay, are we prepared to vote? I just want to make sure everybody's had their say. Okay. With that, we need to do a roll call vote, don't we, Ronnie?
I would like to make a comment, if it's possible, just to say thank you, Max. I know you put in a lot of time and effort in putting this together, and it's evident to me that it was pretty detailed research you had to do. Thank you.
Yeah.
I second that. Well said.
Okay. Commissioner Gauthier?
Yes.
Yes.
Fellows,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Chair Boehner?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. We're recommending feedback, associated amendments, and guide to the council with minor amendments.
I have one question. You may want to throw rotten apples at me. Have you thought about what's going to be coming to us in January and February?
Yeah, so that aforementioned development, as I mentioned, the application has been deemed complete.
This is the home development or the one that's 130?
It's a new home development that is immediately adjacent to the town center over on Deep Bend and Elsner. So the town center was between Roy Rogers, Deep Bend to the north, Elsner to the east. On the other side of Elsner is a new development, 223 lots, about 40 acres, stormwater facility, a trail, and they are moving full steam ahead. It's the same folks as the town center was, so it's new home and TCD, Civic Community Design. It's all these applications are complicated, but it's a significantly less complicated application in the sense that there is no floodplain alterations going on. There isn't as much habitat conservation areas being disturbed, but it's still, and there's no annexation. They've already annexed. They were annexed in the annexation that occurred last year. So I have, in my completeness letter issued to the developer and the applicant, tentative planning commission hearing date for that on January 22nd.
Is it tentative or is it for sure that we're meeting today?
Well, it's tentative was like 95%.
Okay, so
25th?
January 25th?
22nd, excuse me.
So that's the fourth Wednesday in January. Depending on feedback I received from the commissioners, we may have a workshop, but that's up to you. I feel as if it was helpful last time.
Yes.
To be able to voice your concerns and pose questions that could then be answered at the hearing.
Yes.
So if you would like, we could also schedule a workshop with the developer, and that would likely be on the 8th,
Okay.
January
8th.
No, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Rather than just getting a packet and going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that workshop, you can ask questions,
Mm-hmm.
hear a presentation, but they cannot engage in answers.
Well, what was for helpful to me is I thought of questions that they might not have the right person there at that moment to answer the question, so that they knew the kinds of questions that they were going to get asked at the public hearing.
Okay.
And I think that was useful to them as well.
And so I can reach out to Anna Bernadaro over at New Home and Stacy Connery and those folks tomorrow and put that on the books for the 8th.
The one for the 8th, is that gonna be at 6 o'clock?
Yeah.
Does it have to be?
Well, if it's a workshop, Ronnie, can it be a different time?
that's up to the planning commission.
Not a regularly scheduled meeting. If someone wants to make a motion and have it be a different time.
Is there a problem with anybody?
So what time do we want to have it? Because I just need it in the evening, because that's when I get off work.
Okay. Then we have to have it in the evening.
Yeah, then we'll do it
Regular time.
That was
6. We're not going the 8th.
January 8th. That's the second Wednesday in January, and then there'll be a city council meeting on the 15th.
So you get to do lots of night meetings, Ronnie.
All right, over here,
Okay.
Okay, well, that's all I got for you.
Okay, any other comments for the good of the order before I ask for a motion to adjourn?
Comment?
Yeah.
I would, if possible, like to put on the agenda for our next meeting a section for procedural questions. I've come up with, as we do this, a bunch of procedural questions. Ironically, the first one would be, how do you get an item on the agenda for the next meeting? Which is what I'm asking. So, anyway, I think it'd be kind of good questions if we all heard, how do you do this? How do you do that?
Ronnie, could we add that on and, you know, maybe have a half hour to an hour?
Yeah, an hour.
At the workshop?
An hour would be way too.
Would that be better to do it on the
That's what I'm thinking, yeah. Yeah.
after the workshop with the developer, and then they can do some internal discussion?
That'd be great.
Okay.
Because most of the folks here haven't been on the planning commission very long, and it's
I mean,
technical.
An important question that would come up with this, that just I added, was we had mentioned looking at the minutes beforehand and letting everybody see them. How do we do that? See, this is my,
you don't.
right,
Unfortunately, you cannot do that.
right. That's the kind of
So
question
the
I've got.
only time you can do that is when it is published on the agenda website.
So then the question would become,
Because
what do we do?
yeah, because what could happen, and I've had extensive conversation with OEGC on this, is they say Mr. Mitchell got that email, talks to Carol about it, and Carol talks to her about it, and then talks to you. Now I have a quorum. And so Ethics Commission is very, what's the word? Is very cautious of serial communication, and that includes replying all, forwarding, something else.
Did you say, I remember I asked you this earlier today, did you say whether or not, OGC mentioned that the staff could like paraphrase to the commission?
I don't remember that one.
Like,
Okay, all right, following this line. It's sometimes hard for the other commissioners to have enough memory to understand what I'm actually was suggesting, could the person who wanted to do this, could they write it up, make copies, so that at the meeting, when you do it, so that they could. Yeah.
At the meeting, you
Yeah.
folks can do it.
No, but I'm thinking then the rest of the commissioners would be able to read it, basically know what you're.
Yeah.
Right, what we're voting for.
So
Yep.
like, Commissioner Mitchell could have made a couple
Yeah.
copies, or
Yeah.
he could have sent the email to me, hey, can you make a copy
Yeah.
of this for the meeting?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Okay. All right. So,
Answered that question.
Is that something that if you see Mr. Mitchell was in fact to send you proposed change to the minutes, would you be able to forward to us prior to the meeting? No.
Not at all.
Day of only.
Not day of, at the meeting, when the meeting.
I mean, you're gonna, that's what I mean, at the meeting, you have, be
Because
sitting down.
because I think it would make it easier for everyone else.
I don't know.
Ronnie, I was at that training, and I have a slightly different take on what that issue is. If you have serial communication regarding anything that could result in a discussion or consensus or decision, that's of concern. But if it's just for information purposes, that doesn't constitute making a decision. It's just for information. As long as you're not discussing it, you can So that was my interpretation, and I think
You are
it's,
correct on that.
yeah.
But on this particular issue, it had some concerning language in there, because I even forwarded it to OEGC, and they said no.
You can't submit changes to, or suggested changes to minutes
No,
or
because you're gonna make
information?
a decision on it.
What's that?
You're gonna make a decision on it.
Okay,
Yeah, does that make sense now?
yeah.
So like if you sent an email to Gretchen, say, hey, I'm having a party at my house tomorrow. That's informational.
And has nothing to do with business.
That has nothing to do with P2P business. I'm just using that as an example, it's a 401, but. Party Gretchen?
Okay.
Not quite yet.
We're getting a little off the topic here.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So January 8th, we can talk more about
Okay,
this.
yeah, I think that would be helpful. Okay, with that, I would love to have a motion to adjourn.
I motion we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All right.
Very Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever your particular winter solstice related festival is.
All right.
Old phrase.
And I apologize, thank you for the card.